Hello from Cyberscape, the Federal Cybersecurity Summit. I'm Ross John Fortuna. I'm here with Daryl Haegley, Technical Director of Air Force Control Systems, Cyber Resiliency, and CROCS, which we're going to talk about. Thanks for joining me.
You bet, Ross.
So now that it's operational, tell me about how CROCS is translating the high-level Pentagon, policy stuff into the actual tasks and the actual operational stuff.
Right. So it was really important to have the initial policy written up front because, despite everyone wanting to do things, that there's not this overarching policy. And it took over a year for kind of a whole group of all the representatives from mission assurance, from intel, from operations, from logistics, all to get together to come up, and the secretary signed a 100-point plan, said these are the things you have to do. Now with that, then we needed somebody to track all that, right? So there were all these policies that all said IT, but nothing said OT, right? So CROCS was formed, the Cyber Resilience Office of Control Systems, modeled after the Cyber Resiliency Office of Weapons Systems, or CROWS, that also coordinates and tries to inculcate cyber from the very beginning, right? So from design, contract, training, people, processes, and technology, the whole thing. So now we have a coordinating body. We meet every month. I have 100+ stakeholders across the Air Force and Space Force, OT experts, and we go through that list of 100 things, and then we're tracking specific progress on those. So those are everyone from updating your own policy to include OT, from having training, from a cyber discipline to include OT, because there's an 18-month cyber defender course that doesn't have OT in it. So that's what CROCS is getting. Okay, what's the right level to do there? And then also representing all the OT stakeholders. So not just power, water, but to include fuel, wastewater, airfield lighting, manufacturing and security systems, camera systems, all those that are not IT. We're trying to bring all those together under one collective body to, again, align the people, processes, and technologies so we're all in lockstep.
I want to sort of go back and talk the umbrella side of it, the sort of the bird's eye view of it, because OT sometimes does get forgotten. So,
right.
So can you kind of expand on that? You talked about the 18-month program and stuff, but how can we get people more involved?
Right. So we really focus on everyone understands their mission. What we found is a little bit of gap on, hey, I have to launch this. I have to, provide this service. My building does this communications. They may not know that the power and water is critical to that. Now, the people who are running the power and water know that what's critical to themselves and what's critical, but the mission folks. So we are also aligning what's important from a mission perspective. And then we have a repository to where we have to link. These things are, if you're doing flight operations, you have to do this. You're going to need fuel. You're going to have a command center, which is going to need power and water. You're going to have a network operations center. You're going to have data centers. Power and water are critical to those. And so one of the things we found is some of the OT owners may say, well, this is standard, this is what it requires to run this building, but the mission people will say, no, this is really critical that this be up all the time. And so that's where CROCS comes in and helps broker that and raise the level of criticality and ensure there's the right risk posture assigned to it.
So I hear all that and think of resiliency, essentially, and I think we've talked about the notion of buttressing that resiliency and how CROCS can do that, and particularly when you get those threats, how do you keep that going, this sort of notion of playing hurt and things like that, so when right. you are attacked or when you are facing that?
So we do have some specific exercises. There's an energy readiness resilience exercise to where we actually unplug the power from the utility coming off base, and then we make sure that we are able to operate. We've incorporated cyber resiliency exercises into that. So we'll say, okay, this an HVAC system you have to determine how the code's been exploited or things have been changing. And then, so as a team, you rally together to figure out, how you respond to that. So understanding how to operate in a contested environment and training and rehearsing in that's what the CROCS is trying to coordinate and get all the right people and set out that environment. We need industry to help with the tools and the things to help create that environment. But there's a policy that asks us to do that kind of rehearsal.
On zero trust, something that everyone everywhere has been in the cybersecurity world is talking about. I want to know how that is a part of CROCS and how you're dealing with that with some of these legacy systems that, I know you talked about, secure by design and secure before implementation, things like that, but you got to get up to speed on zero trust. How are you working on that?
So I think one of the great things about zero trust is it has us to think differently. It says you have someone in this network already, and that is typically what the engineers who design these systems never thought would happen. So now you have to take a little different approach and think, all right, if this is it, then how do we segment this? Or most importantly, how do we recover to the good state? So we are working with each of the stakeholders, from security forces, manufacturing, civil engineering, fuel systems, logistics. Okay, what are those systems are doing right now that are part of the zero trust families and capabilities? We can take credit for doing many of these things, right? So like account management, we can add multi-factor authentication. There was this, you can't do zero trust for OT. Well, we've dispelled that. We've done a couple of pilots to show that, but you have to do it in the right way. You have to have the right people in the room. You have to be in the room where it happens, right? So what we have found, the OT people were not. Now we're bringing them in, but we also need the cyber people to help us with those decisions on making zero trust real, right? From a data perspective, what we tend to think is we need to have a baseline. Well, and a lot of vendors will say, I want a baseline 30 days. Well, if you're doing environmental data, you're going to need a whole year. So you have to bring all those situations into play when you're going to create what the real zero trust capabilities can be.
You mentioned working with industry and all the different stakeholders. I know in a lot of IT environments, there's a lot of talk about SBOMs when we talk about supply chain security. So what does that look like in OT, and how do you make sure that the supply chain is not compromisable?
Right. Well, there's part of the good news story there is a lot of these things are 40 plus years old. So we know where they were manufactured. We kind of have that list. It's almost more the newer things that we're bringing in that we have to make sure and understand that. There are specific groups that are asking those type of questions. Our contract language now requires that you meet certain criteria. I would like to see it more in line with what we do kind of automatically with IT. We'll get there. But one of the good things with the legacy systems is we kind of know what they are.
You touched on it before, but within this sort of IT-OT conversation, and it was in CROCS, certification and getting that workforce. Where are you on that, and what does that look like going forward?
I really am appreciative that you asked this question, because this is really important. The NIST has these cyber workforce roles. There's about 76 of them, and one is focused on OT. And we have been working for 2.5 years to get this finalized. And we're working with the DOW CIO, and there's this bureaucratic process, and we are almost at the finish line here. But that's really important. So we have collectively, industry and government folks have collectively said these are the competencies. So everybody's in agreement. We all agree on the certifications. That's great. But what we do, until this is certified as one that the CIO can say, how many of these do you need, right? And then also the Office of Personnel Management every 2 years asks the whole government, how many of these do you need? So we won't know how many of these we need until we have that. So there's a general practitioner that, let's say, who runs the automation systems of the building. they would have to know a certain amount of cybersecurity, but would not be a cyber defender. Then we also have to have somebody who is ready to do forensics and is going to be on a team to do some of that offense and defense of cyber work in OT, and that's what we're building as well.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by the workforce aspects of that. So to that end, I think it's interesting that you have those different people in those roles, but that again, there's that we're still at the nascent stages of NIST and things.
We don't know how many we need. That's what's really a challenge. We know industry has a lot of folks, right, and there's no shortage of also offerings for cyber as a service. So we have to kind of know what that balance is going to be. And all the OEMs now are building a cyber capability in their products now. So, what does the engineer or what does the OT person, system owner and operator need to know, and what will they do? What does an energy manager, facility manager need to do? Right. And then what do we need from a real cyber defender? There is, we have found, we polled 100 plus different industry folks, said, tell us what advanced cyber training you have for OT. And that really doesn't exist. I mean, there are certification programs. You can send people to SANS for week class, but after 3 weeks,
that kind of
correct.
Stuff, sure.
But even if you took them in 3 weeks in a row, are they ready to deploy at U.S. Cybercom? No. So we have to. There are ranges we could. We have to try and build an OT capability in. We have to make it realistic from a power, water, and fuel. So we want to make sure that there's a real-time kind of application that goes with that, so people can apply what they learned, and then they're ready to deploy.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that can get up and running soon. We can get everything more cyber ready and everything more secure. Thanks so much for doing this.
You're welcome.